Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in today. Welcome to It's Time for More Injury Funding, the podcast for all who want to learn about legal funding and significance in personal injury, workers' compensation, product liability, medical malpractice, and many other types of law practice domains. I'm your host, Laura, founder and CEO of More Injury Funding, the legal funding counselors with passion for law, medicine, legal funding, and heart for all suffering individuals. More Injury Funding is a sponsor, member, associate, or business partner of this podcast, Academy of Truck Accident Attorneys, Sandy Springs Bar Association, Georgia Association of Paralegals, Atlanta Legal Aid Society, State Bar of Georgia, Georgia Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, St. Andrew Rowing Club, and Georgia Trial Lawyers Association. In today's episode, I have a special guest, Attorney Lauren Wood, Principal Trial Attorney with L. Wood Law, based in Woodland Hills, California. Attorney Wood is a member of numerous organizations, including CAALA, Consumer Attorneys of California, Western Trial Lawyers Association, and many, many others. She's also a host of WIITS, which stands for Women in Trial Travel Summit, and travel blogger behind Travel is the Cure. Today, we'll focus our attention on the Women in Trial Travel Summit and the power of networking, and how can attending a women's trial summit benefit your career. At the end of our episode, I'll have a fun pop-up question for our guest, Lauren, today, so stay tuned in. Lauren, welcome to It's Time for More Injury Funding podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Laura. I'm so happy to be here.
Absolutely. Your passion is traveling the world, and these small group trips combine your experience in the legal field with that never-ending itch to see the world. These group trips are specially curated so that women lawyers can gain CAALA credits while experiencing a beautiful new destinations and getting to know other like-minded women in the legal field. That is just fascinating. How and
Thank
when?
you so much.
So tell me, how and when did you come up with this idea?
Well, I think the idea originally came from a desire to combine my two passions, really being a trial lawyer and travel. I have always been in love with travel, and back in 2017, I started the travel blog that you referenced, Travel is the Cure. And so back in 2020, I decided to host a group trip through the travel blog. And inevitably, just because my own personal network of women is mostly women lawyers. So a large majority of the people who signed up for that group trip were women lawyers. And actually, a friend of mine, Ashley Lakin, said to me, hey, you should try to get this trip certified for MCLEs. It was a trip to Bali. And there were, I think, 12 of us. And I sort of thought that would be tricky to get the state bar to agree to. But nonetheless, I said, okay, yeah, that's a pretty good idea. Well, I'll restructure things so that we do MCLEs in the morning over breakfast, and then, enjoy Bali the rest of the day. And of course, this trip was unfortunately scheduled for March of 2020. And so as it was leading up, things were getting a little dicey, and only about half of the gals went. And those of us that did, we ended up having to come home emergently because the borders were closing. So that trip didn't end up being such a great success, but the outcome was that I had previously submitted credits for the state bar, and after we got back, I got an approval letter. And so that was really when I started thinking, oh, okay, this is something I could do more regularly on the group trip aspect of it. And then it also started to get me thinking about hosting a traditional conference. And so WIITS, Women in Trial Travel Summit, is sort of split up in between two types of events. I do a traditional conference, which we've had in Punta de Mita, Mexico each year. I just had my third one in April, and we have the fourth set to take place in Punta Mita again in April of 2025. And then I do these small group trips that you were talking about. And so since I started WIITS, we have done Tuscany, another trip to Bali, Curacao, Peru, Hong Kong, Grand Cayman, I think that's it. And then we have Greece and Morocco coming up this year.
Oh, it's amazing. So I'm from Europe. If you need any advice, any tips about European trips, please involve me.
Yes,
traveling is one of my passions as well.
Yes, I mean, it really broadens your horizons, and I'm kind of obsessed. I love to be anywhere but here. I love when I'm home, but I just love traveling.
I'm totally with you. I don't blame you for that. So, Lauren, how can networking at the Women in Trial Travel Summit positively impact one's career in the industry? Because you mentioned there are primarily women lawyers who travel with you to these seminars.
Yes, that's a good question. So, while the group trips are predominantly women lawyers, because we offer CLEs, it is not limited to women lawyers. So we also have a lot of women in the legal industry, people such as yourself, and sometimes even people who are not in the legal industry at all and just have a friend of a friend and want to come along. But really, I think on a small group trip, having the opportunity to connect with people on a more intimate level. I mean, when you're traveling with a group of 8 to 12 women, you get to know one another really, really well. And you get to have those hard conversations and connect more closely. And so I think certainly in the small group trips, it's an opportunity to gain really deep connections with other women in our legal industry. And then, of course, the conference itself, it's a great networking opportunity for women lawyers in general. The speaker topics generally are tailored to trial lawyers. That's what I do, and personal injury. That's my network mostly. But we do get a lot of women from other legal fields, and I think that, to be honest, they probably gain a better networking benefit because they're in a different field and they're meeting so many contacts. But ultimately, I think it's just having the opportunity to be on the same page with other women in the legal industry. You know, we encounter similar issues and constraints that our male counterparts don't, and just being able to connect on in that regard is helpful, I think.
Absolutely. So since you get to meet a lot of women trial lawyers and travel with them, I'm sure you cover a lot of topics. So from your experience from all these travels, what challenges do these women face and how do they overcome these obstacles to achieve success in the legal career?
Yeah, that's a very good question and a tricky one to answer. At my main conference, for example, we cover topics ranging from like trial skills to just like your usual ethics and things like that. But we have done discussions on like the pay gap. I did a confidential study in 2023 with all attendees and asked everyone to put down, without listing their name, how much they're making, how many years of practice they are. And we distributed that information amongst the group and then tried to compare it to what we knew our male counterparts were making. And so that is one small example of I think, an issue that definitely affects women, the pay gap in the legal industry. But I think there are other things that we've spoken about, whether it's like work-life balance, or it's not to say that dads aren't as involved with their children, but I think personally, as a trial lawyer, I've noticed that it's very, very difficult, as a mom of a 3-year-old, to be in trial. And for decades, I think that most of the trial lawyers, who were predominantly men, didn't really encounter these issues. They had a wife at home to pick up the kids and things like that. And I don't have a spouse, so I think that that's just one example of things that we've spoken about in this forum.
Very interesting. It sounds like there's so much power in networking, as much as there's innovation created during these travels with other trial attorneys who are women. How are women in trial shaping the future of the legal industry in the United States?
I mean, I certainly know that there are more and more female trial lawyers as time goes on. And I think that a lot of us might encounter some sort of a fear entering the trial sphere specifically. And I think that once we're able to just overcome that fear and get into more trials and get comfortable, there will obviously just be more and more women trial lawyers. But there are just so many incredible female trial lawyers already. I don't want to name names, but I can think of dozens who I admire and have been trailblazers in this industry already and have set the stage for younger female trial attorneys to do the same.
Lauren, how do you come up with the list of keynote speakers and panel discussions, workshop ideas? How do you locate these women leaders in the legal industry? You mentioned you know quite a few, but how do you get them? Do you find them online? Do you go to seminars? Is that word of mouth?
Yeah, it's mostly word of mouth. When I started the first conference back in, I guess it was 2022, it was really just my personal network. So I reached out to women I knew in the industry and asked for friends of friends to put me in connection with other people. And so I didn't really anticipate having that many attend the first year. And we had 120 people come the first year. So it was quite a bit more than I expected. But then obviously since then, I'm constantly reaching out to contacts that I obviously already have, but then women I've met through the conference. There are a number of women that I've met from out of state, and I reach, they'll come to speak, and then I'll ask, hey, who else would you recommend? And so it's just kind of like the network is slowly expanding.
And your summit serves as a platform for fostering these connections, promoting diversity and inclusion, and driving positive change within the trial travel sector. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I think that I'm always aiming to keep the speakers diverse, with one exception. To date, all of my speakers have been women, so I guess you can't say it's totally diverse. But I think that having a diverse panel of women obviously is important to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion, but also just like it's better for everyone to have it be diverse. And you want to hear from different backgrounds, and I can think of nothing better than to have people from different arenas speaking and giving their opinions and their wisdom.
Is there a specific set of values that you practice with other fellow women trial lawyers during these travels?
So yeah, for the group trips, one of the things that I try to stress is just making sure that if you decide to go on a group trip with 10 to 12 women, that you make an effort to be kind and inclusive and respectful to your fellow attendees. We all know that travel can be taxing. Some people travel better than others. And so one of the things I just really try to reiterate is kindness, respect. Just try to give people the benefit of the doubt and make it a very welcoming forum for everyone who's there.
What is the average number of trial lawyers that travel with you, or is there an average or recommended maximum?
Yeah, that's a good question. So for the small group trips, they need to stay small. I intentionally want them to be intimate. And so all of my trips have been between 8 and 12 women. I actually for Morocco, which is coming up in November, I had so many the trips sold out in less than 2 hours, and I had about 20 signups at that stage. So I'm doing two trips back to back, because I think that now I think we have 25 people, and it's just too many. So I do try to keep it at about 12 or 13 max. I have 13 people going to Greece. So that's the cap for the small group trips. The conference in Mexico is usually around 150 people.
So is that in Mexico so much more because it's just closer, it's less expensive, it's easier to organize?
That's a good question. So the small group trips are specially curated trips where essentially, if you want to come on the trip, you sign up, and then almost everything is included. So you get your flight there, and then there are a number of activities, meals, things like the transportation while we're in that destination. Almost all of that is included, and so it's like a flat fee. You just show up, right? For the Mexico event, it's more like a traditional conference where you buy a ticket, and of course that ticket allows you to attend the speaker sessions each morning. It includes our complimentary breakfast, and then it includes access to the hosted events throughout the week. But that is more like your traditional conference in the sense that people just buy their ticket and then they arrange for their own lodging and lodging and flight and things like that. And really, it's not a curated schedule where they're required to be with the group and doing, group activities.
Okay. What are some common workshop topics do you cover at these summits?
That's a good question. So for the main conference, we do a lot of trial skills like mock opening statement, mock voir dire, cross-examination, closing arguments. And I'd say a large majority of it is litigation skills based. So things like depositions, mediations. This last year we had a judges panel, which included tips from the bench, which was probably my favorite. We obviously do just standard topics like ethics and business and law. And then generally speaking, the small group trips, we do ethics CLEs, because I find that that's usually the ethics CLEs are the most pesky to check off. And so I specifically offer ethics CLEs on the small group trips so that we can get those out of the way.
Okay. And do travel and trial women feel like your summit offers and promotes mentorship, advocacy, and empowerment in the trial travel industry?
Absolutely. So I mean, just thinking about some of the women that I have had in attendance, I know for certain that they have offered their ear to younger, less experienced attendees. I have seen connections be established that definitely ended up in like a mentorship role. And so I think that that's something that absolutely happens at the conference for sure.
What percentage of these attendees are women at the Women in Trial Travel Summit?
That's a good question. Obviously, it's a conference for women. So a very large percentage of the attendees are women, but we always do have several men. In fact, generally speaking, they're usually spouses, partners. But one in particular is the husband of one of my speakers, and he's also a lawyer and sat in on the speaker sessions and said that he got a lot out of it. So I'm thinking it's probably 98, 99% women, but we obviously do have men in attendance each year.
Okay, I was just curious to know what types of networking opportunities are typically available at your summits.
Yeah, so at the conference, we do a welcome reception on Wednesday, which is, it's beachside hosted cocktails and past apps. And then Thursday, we usually do what I call a pool party. It's basically just a poolside, very, very casual opportunity for women to enjoy the sun and enjoy beautiful Punta Mita. Friday, we do a hosted lunch with a keynote speaker. And even though that's a seated lunch where we have the keynote speaker speaking most of the time, certainly people interact after that. And then, of course, there's a hosted dinner on Saturday night. And so for the conference itself, we usually have 4 to 5 networking opportunities. And then, of course, if you're attending a small group trip, it's like constant networking, right? You're traveling with women and getting to know them on such a deeper level. And ultimately, at the end of a trip, you know everyone 10 times better than you did before. And so that, I think, is invaluable.
That's incredible. Besides all of these engaging sessions, interactive workshops, and panel discussions, what is the main focus of the Women in Trial Travel Summit?
Yeah, so I think that goes back to why I originally wanted to host something like this. Selfishly, I wanted to combine being a trial lawyer and traveling. But I thought, it would be so nice to get women, especially in our industry, who work incredibly hard, just to get them out of the office, maybe even away from their partner and kids, if that's what they want, to just enjoy themselves and connect with other women and take me time, right? Focus on themselves. And so that was the initial reason behind it. But then at the same time, I also, I have been in this industry for 13 years now, and I've been to just about every personal injury legal conference out there. And while I do love them, I have noticed a need for a space for women. Some of these conferences are not particularly safe for women. And I think that it's really important for us to have a space just for us. And one of the comments that I get from my attendees is, oh, I felt more comfortable because it's only women, or, I didn't have to worry about what I was wearing as much as I would at certain other conferences. And to me, that's really refreshing. It definitely is a different vibe, and all the women in attendance, I think, if you're there, you're there because you're the type of person who wants to meet other women in our industry and connect with other people, and so it's a very welcoming environment.
I love it. Can you share with our viewers and listeners what travel plans do you have for the remaining 2024? And I know you touched some on it, but and also for the upcoming 2025 and maybe even for 2026.
Yes. Okay. Great question. I love this. In July is the Greece trip. We're doing Athens, Santorini, Naxos, and Mykonos. I have a local event, and local to me, obviously not local to you, sadly, but I'm doing my second annual polo mixer at the Santa Barbara Polo Fields at the end of July. And then I have 2 group trips to Morocco. One is the last week of October, and the second is the first week of November. Both of my group trips this year are sponsored by Rosa Florentino of Quest Settlements, so I'm super grateful to Rosa for that. And then 2025, the only thing that I technically have on the books is the Punta Mita conference in April of 2025. But it is very much my intention to do at least 2, probably 3 group trips. I haven't quite decided yet, but Japan is looking like a contender. And I'd like to do Switzerland or France. I mean, part of me wants to go back to Italy because I could go back to Italy over and over and over again. But I'm trying to find someplace new. And then we'll probably go back to the Caribbean. And for 2026, the only one that we'll do a conference. I don't know if it will be in Mexico again. I'm taking suggestions from people if they have any suggestions for a new spot. But the only one I know that's probably for sure for 2026 is a repeat of the Grand Cayman trip that we did this last January. I brought a group of 12 women to Grand Cayman, where we timed it so that we were there for the Cayman cookout, which was phenomenal. And everyone loved it so much that they said, let's do it again next year. And I think that instead of doing it for 2025, we'll skip a year and go back for 2026.
This is so great. I hope, my dear listeners and viewers, today you've learned as much as I did about the power of networking and how can attending a women's travel summit benefit your career. And as promised, here's a fun pop question for you, Lauren. You ready?
Okay, yes.
What is one thing you wish more people understood about your profession or the work that you do?
Oh, that's easy. You know, as a personal injury attorney, we have always been pegged with that horrible phrase, ambulance chaser. And there is so much, especially with tort reform, there's just a lot of bad press about trial lawyers. But realistically, we're the ones helping people. You know, we are the people who actually care about our clients. We are helping people who have been injured, sometimes catastrophically injured. And we're suing insurance companies and major corporations that frankly don't give a shit about people. And so it really is very frustrating to me that we're the ones that get the bad name when we're the ones that actually care about people and actually help people. So
I love the way you worded it. That's exactly that. Lauren, again, that was an amazing time spent with you today. If anyone needs your help or is looking for Wood Law Corporation, how can they reach you? Do you have a website, social media resources, website, phone numbers?
Yes, all the things. So my website is lwoodlaw.com. It's the letter L because it's my name, Lauren Wood. So it's just the letter L, WOOD, law.com. My phone number, office phone number is 818-302-0008. And if you have any questions about the Women in Trial Travel Summit, our website is womenintrialtravelsummit.com. I know it's a mouthful, but the acronym was taken. Or you can follow us on Instagram, same thing, at womenintrialtravelsummit.com.
I love it.
Just at Women in Trial Travel Summit.
Perfect. Again, that was attorney Lauren Wood with Wood Law Corporation and founder of the Women Trial Travel Summit. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you all for listening to our story today. For more tips and tricks on legal funding and personal injury law related topics, follow me. Download, like, and subscribe for It's Time for More Injury Funding podcast on several podcast platforms worldwide, including but not limited to Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, iHeart, and all others. And follow More Injury Funding on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Pinterest, YouTube, Yelp, Google Business Profile, and my website at moreinjuryfunding.com. I can't wait to see and listen to you again soon. Until then, be well. Thank you so much.